What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Immersive Podcast. I'm happy to have my guest Nadia here with me today. We're getting into, soon I'll be able to say we're into dozens of episodes, but at least 12 episodes now. So things are going pretty strong. And with always a wonderful shout out to our affiliate sponsors at Unified TV. That is the network that you typically associate with Jason Shurka and a lot of the organization that he's associated with, TLS. You may have seen some of their reels and advertisements and such. There's a link in the bio for a subscription to their service. And also a huge shout out to GFL, that's Galactic Federation of Light Clothing. They make, specifically their mission is to make clothing for light workers and their definition of a light worker. And if you want to check that out, we had an episode where we chatted a little further on this the other day. It's on YouTube and Spotify. Their definition of a light worker really seems to be just somebody who is contributing their gifts to the greater good, to the new earth, to a benevolent cause. So you don't have to be doing light language. Clothing for light workers. They're even doing some great things with frequency embedding in their different cottons and different fabrics and things like that. So if you're interested in anything that I just said, feel free to check out the links in the bio. Nadia is a QHHT practitioner and a quantum healer. She works with the subconscious. She does all sorts of interesting stuff. Nadia, could you tell me a little bit about what you do, who you are, and introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Tyler. Thank you for having me as well. It's always a pleasure to meet you. So I am a QHHT practitioner, Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique, which is, of course, the method that was developed by the late and great Dolores Cannon, which I know a lot of people would be familiar with her. She tends to pop up in news feeds and things like that.
She will pop up on your algorithm. That's true.
Yeah. I do a lot of that. I've been doing that for a few years. I also do quantum healing sessions online as well, which is a very similar form of hypnosis as well. I run like past life regression events, meditations, and I like to dabble in a lot of different things on the side as well and keep things interesting.
That's great. And for those who are wondering what that sound is in the background, that's my cat coughing. I've never had that happen before, but if that threw you off a little bit, Nadia, I am so sorry.
No, it doesn't, because guaranteed for some reason there's always something that whenever there's not live stream but recordings or things over Zoom, things like that, there's always something that comes up with me. I don't know why. So I'm not surprised.
And sometimes she's actually sitting right here on the show. She's a little bit of a little star, a little prima donna. So that's great. How long have you been practicing not only QHHT but hypnosis in general? How long has that been a part of your life?
I really struggle with time frame questions. I think it's I would do the math every time I'm asked. Yeah, even like my age, like things that you should just know off the top of your head. I think in my mind, time doesn't exist, so it's really difficult.
I agree. Yeah, it's a little different for me. I don't usually know the day or the date, etc. I got to look it up.
I know, it's terrible. Thank God for smartphones. So where are we? 2024, so about 3 years.
Okay. Yeah,
3 or 4 years. Cool. Yeah, since I started dabbling in that. So a little while. Yeah. It's been a ride.
That's great. So you're in Brisbane, Australia. Is that where you're from?
No, Melbourne, actually.
Oh, you're in Melbourne. Okay, maybe I read it wrong.
Yeah, I'm in Melbourne.
I just mixed them up. But
I wish I was in Brisbane. It'd probably be about 20 degrees warmer than today.
Okay.
But no, Melbourne's a nice city, but
Melbourne,
just too
cold.
Australia.
All over the world this week. We'll see when we post those that I keep saying that. Okay, so that's really cool. I live in the U.S. I've lived in the U.S. my whole life, and I do know a few people who live in Australia. They're not people who moved there. They're people who I've met, through social media and through this kind of community in general who live there.
A lot of interesting people out this way.
A lot of interesting differences, interesting similarities. just something I'm curious about. I mean, QHHT and quantum healing and just things of that under that whole umbrella, etc. Dolores Cannon, even just for example, blowing up on social media, even posthumously. That's been something that's really been massively prevalent and on the rise here, at least in my point of view, in the States. Really, in that timeline that you mentioned there, really the past 3 or 4 years, it kind of like times out with a particular event that we all experienced in the world.
Yes.
But I don't know if you spent any time in the States. Unfortunately, I have no comparison to Australia. But how has that kind of been for you as far as watching that whole scene develop and people start to take, QHHT more seriously? I've seen it embraced on mainstream television and things like that. How's that kind of been for you as far as your view as a practitioner?
Yeah, I think, people here are a lot more open to things like that, particularly in the last few years, last 3 or 4 years in certain events. And I think, I don't know from personal experiences I haven't been in the US in the last few years, but everyone I speak to, I think QHHT, it's a lot bigger in the US than it is in Australia. I think, in the last few years, it's definitely increased in popularity. I think people have definitely heard of Dolores Cannon. And a lot of people I speak to have heard of her, but they didn't realize there was a hypnosis technique and things like that. But yeah, her popularity has definitely increased in the last few years here in Australia. But yeah, I think not enough. I think more people here need to know about her. I think Australia's a little bit slow sometimes with things like that. But definitely increased for sure.
Yeah, increased for sure. I mean, that's at least positive,
Yeah.
and any growth is good. And
Yeah,
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 it's
yeah. And
interesting.
I think particularly not even the last few years, but I would probably say I want to say like since 2013
Yeah.
maybe. I noticed sort of a big shift
Looking back, that's when I see the
here.
big shift happening too, in just kind of every facet of life. Looking back, I see
Yeah.
that, I actually remember I was in college at the time and people were having like big, and they were kind of joking. They were having like end of the world parties and stuff. Just, that whole play on the 12/21 date, the
Oh, the Mayan
equinox of the
calendar.
Mayan calendar and such. But I think my personal theory on that is maybe it wasn't exactly as literal as we modern programmed Homo sapiens like to make things. The theory was that the world was going to end and the calendar was going to end, so therefore, great cataclysms, younger dryast, volume, who knows, 2 or 14 or who knows, but
Yes.
I've come to believe that, and I think you might be on the same track, and maybe not. You can let me know, but I think that something did change on that date. I think something did change and begin to change around that time. It just wasn't what we modern humans like to compartmentalize as a singular event and something as drastic as a singular cataclysm that's talked about on every news network, like you see in disaster movies where something happens overnight and the world
Yeah,
comes anew, born again. I don't think that's what it was. I think it was a slow start of planting seeds, slowly watering
definitely.
some of them withering away and dying, and some of them just blossoming, like Dolores Cannon example, blossoming beyond
Yeah.
belief and setting examples that had such large impacts that even, after they're gone from this 3D realm, this current existence that we're in, that seed is not done growing. And yeah, it feels like something
Yeah,
really did change. And then looking back, what,
definitely.
15 years, 12 years, whatever it was ago, that's not a long time
No.
in the conscious, in the cosmos time, in the scheme of things. And I actually am one to believe that time is, it's not even the fourth dimension. It's just something that we kind of use to codify things. But I don't think time is
Yeah.
exactly linear like we perceive it to be. So
Yeah, agree. And a lot of people I speak to as well, think or have noticed the same thing, because it's not, that many years ago, 12 years ago, it wasn't, like you say, some cataclysmic shift. There was no meteorite. The Earth didn't split.
right.
We didn't blow up. And it was such a gradual shift that you don't notice it until years later, and you look back and you sort of reflect on that time and things that have happened and the way things have come about, either in your life or the way that you see things in the world around you. Because it was, like you said, it was like a planting of a seed, and things just grew from there very slowly, but you don't notice it's grown until you look back, reflect on that. But yeah, and then I think in, let's say, between 2020, 2021, that was more like a big shove as opposed to a more gentle shift for a lot of people, I've
Yeah.
found.
I was one of
Yeah,
those
so
people. I was pushed.
yeah, the push, right? It's like this, it was like a violent
Or pulled. It was like I always
push.
use the term magnet. I was pulled, there was a magnet
Yeah.
pulling me towards something, but I wasn't really sure what it was. It was kind of like, I don't know if you ever saw the movie Close Encounters of
Yeah.
the Third Kind, with,
Yeah.
Steve Spielberg's movie from the 70s, but he just has this pull, and he doesn't know why, and he's building the Devil's Tower in Wyoming, and he doesn't know what it is, and he just goes there, and well, actually, it's kind of weird the way that he just blindly gets on that ship and goes. But
Yeah.
that's another conversation. But
Yeah.
just a pull towards something that I didn't know what it was, and it's starting to look a little more clear. But who knows? I could be just as off base as I thought I was years ago. I mean, it's one big journey.
And that pull towards something and you don't know what it is. I think I hear a lot of people talk about that, and for me, that comes across, or they come across to me saying, they get to this point where they say, "What am I? I don't know. Who am I?" They get to that point in their life where they're, "Who am I? What am I doing? What's my purpose?" They start, even though they feel pulled, they feel lost because they don't know what they're being pulled towards.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if you can relate to that sort of feeling of being like, "Oh yeah, I'm being pulled,"
Big time.
and they start really questioning their life and what they're doing,
I think
and life in general. I think they start questioning as well.
I almost see that as like a little bit of a rite of passage in a way. I mean, just because it happens, at least for me, there's been a couple of really big eras of my life where that, I mean, especially looking back, that was so much the case that now looking back, I seem to have a little bit of an understanding of the way things went and why, and an appreciation for what I perceived at the time to be negative events and negative feelings and experiences and so on.
That's interesting too, what you say, what you perceived at the time to be negative experiences, because
yeah, everybody's different. Not everybody's able to do that in the same time frame. And then we get into, what's the time frame of things really matter? And yeah, I mean, I think, we needed that too. I think we needed to have that, maybe a massive event. And, just to throw it out there too, it doesn't have to be, I don't know everything. Maybe it wasn't that big event that you guys probably know that I'm hinting at, because I like to keep some episodes clean, some of them go crazy, but, some of them we can keep good and safe. That event, that series of events, that state of world and culture shock that we all experienced back in 2020, 2021, and so forth. Yeah, it definitely changed a lot of people's ethos. And unfortunately, I think in some ways created somewhat of a divide in some ways. At the time it was who does and doesn't wear a mask, who does and doesn't, etc., this and that. And I don't have any public beliefs on the particular issues. We're not here to talk about that, but it was all stuff to divide. But I like what you said, that a lot of people, I think, were given like a kind of a shove rather than the drip, drip, drip that kind of started with that shift, so to speak, back in maybe 2012 with like a natural shift of the poles, which, by the way, actually I do a lot of research and things like that. So NASA did publish a study that for the first time in, I think it was 26,000 years, the Earth's poles were beginning to shift again, and it was measurable, and it's actually been increasing since. This started in 2012, late 2012. So
There
there
you go.
is some actual like modern recognized NASA approved, for whatever you want to take that for,
Yeah.
science saying that yes, there was indeed the start of a pole shift around that time, and
Yeah.
they actually allude to it being something gradual, not something that happens in one day. So who really knows? But
Yeah.
the biggest shift came from all the people I saw waking up, I mean, for lack of a better term, and just getting out there and, you know, just being open to new things. Like I was one of those people, but so many people, yourself, and you're on the front lines. I mean, I imagine, learned so much from your clients and from doing regressions and such. That's got to be just so amazing to be able to do.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, the things that can come up, for lack of a better term, they're just very interesting. And I agree with you that, since 2012 or thereabouts, I know I can't pinpoint the time exactly because it was so gradual. It wasn't a
Absolutely.
sudden shove or push. Um, but yeah, it's interesting about the NASA thing. Was that recent? I feel like I don't know if I've heard about that. That's really interesting because
It's
it
been
sort of
kind of
gives that little bit
hush
of
hush.
tangible, sciencey type. And I always love I suppose, the science and tangible aspects to things. I don't always think they have to have that necessarily to back it up.
Right.
But when there is something there that's a little bit more tangible, I just find that fascinating.
I
It's
always
like
like
almost
to,
like a confirmation, like a
absolutely.
sense of, oh, right, okay, that must have something to do with it, because how can, us living in these human bodies on this massive planet, rock spinning in
It's big rock
space and,
in
with
our
these
meat.
magnetic poles, and if they're starting to shift, how can that not affect us in some way, shape, or form?
100%. And
Um,
that's, I think, what it really takes for, a lot of people who need evidence-based science.
hmm,
And I've heard theories and such, that like, and even doing my own research, that it almost sometimes looks and appears on the outside that maybe NASA is an organization that's leaking bits of truth out there slowly, the predictive programming aspect of things. I mean, I don't know that everyone involved with everybody trusted with true disclosure related information is actually on the side of keeping it a secret. And maybe that's
hmm,
why we get certain pictures of Mars and certain pictures of the moon or whatever that have monoliths or faces or,
hmm,
what seem to be like structures. And then maybe 3 or 4 years later, we get a little better picture of it. And it's a little
hmm,
clearer. And it gives people who are just simply watching the science channel, not watching this podcast or the Next Level Soul or anything on like Unified or Gaia or in any kind of, crazy fringe truth network. Although those networks aren't crazy fringe truth networks anymore. I mean, they're
no,
becoming much more valid in the eyes of the mainstream public, which is quite amazing.
yes,
But it takes the still person who's just taking what, maybe Fox News or MSNBC and the major, cable and mainstream networks are saying. It makes them believe in something in the way that they need to understand it. And I always say it, that it's just anything can just be a seed that's planted, but from simple seeds come some of the most beautiful, amazing things. I mean, a lot of things start with just a seed. Just
yeah, that's
seed.
right.
That's all it
Well,
needs.
it has to. Yeah,
Has to.
it has to. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It definitely has to. And yeah, I just find that really fascinating. Like you were saying, there'll be people that perhaps, leak some images here and there and whatnot. And, are all of them legit? Everything that's out there? Probably not, you know. But I like to look at whether it's real or not. I like to look at it all and take it all on its
Take,
value.
take it all in. Yeah,
Um,
all the information.
and that's it. That's right. That's right. There's a lot out there that, and I know that, even in the regressions that I do, they can, like you were saying before, a lot of really interesting information can come through those sessions. And it really varies a lot, in terms of between clients. And I think it varies depending not only on what they need at that point in time, because that tends to be what the information that they get, for them that comes through.
Generally for the benefit of the client.
Of
That's why they
course,
come.
yeah. So it's always for the benefit of the client. So they'll receive whatever information they need. But also it depends, there's an element of where that person is at in their own journey as well. Someone who has only just, say, and I really hate this term, I don't like this term, but, awakened, I don't know why. It's just
I don't like the labels either.
I don't like it, but I say it because people know what you mean. It's a common phrase.
Identifiable.
So, yeah. So let's say these people that have awakened, we'll call them seedlings. I actually like that better. Little seedlings.
They're star seedlings.
They're seedlings because they've just sort of sprouted. That seed was planted, they've sprouted. They're seedlings.
Okay.
So people that are at that stage of their journey, under they're not visiting the Galactic Council. They're not getting, things of that type of nature. That's where
Unless
it
they're the
varies.
reincarnate of Yogananda or whatever. But yeah, very unlikely. You're right. Yeah.
Very unlikely.
I would agree.
Yeah. And that's completely okay. People get what they need at that point in their journey. And so that's what I love, is that it's really so varied. I don't know, when the client comes in, I don't know where they're at. I've never met them before. I don't know their story. And it's really interesting just to find out all about people and learn or really discover with them at the same time what's coming through. And I never know where we're going. I always go in blind, don't know what's going to come through. And I just find that so fascinating. Fascinating.
Absolutely. I mean, regression hypnotherapy has always been fascinating to me. And I've actually always not envied, respected, and thought it very interesting the way that, regressionists and hypnotherapists get to experience the collective, because of course we all experience the collective. I feel like I really get to experience the collective to my own, the best degree that I can as my own piece of it. Even just through things like meditation and going into trance states and doing group meditations. Other thing is having a podcast, a show where I get to talk to people from all different walks of life, most of whom at least identify in some way, shape, or form as awakened. That's a good one. And awakened, enlightened, just becoming unprogrammed, etc. It's generally at least a theme. And, I get viewpoints from all over that spectrum, whether people kind of woke up because they had a real, UFO experience, or if people had, I know people who had a hypnosis regression session, and it really changed everything they thought that they knew about their current life situation. I know people who have done Reiki and had, complete and total revelations about themselves, and then all of the above. I mean, it's just all over the place, and then it's also all over the world. I think that's the coolest thing, is that I'm talking to people all over the world that are having these experiences, or like, not quite like, but like you as a regressionist, somebody doing hypnotherapy, somebody doing quantum healing. When you're getting to hear what their subconscious has to say, sometimes what their self from another time and place in the continuum has to say. I'm getting to hear a different story, a story from different people on how they maybe came from where they once were in this current meat suit. Even every once in a while, they know about their past lives, or they have a gift such as yours. And it's a little bit of a thing we do sometimes, is let people kind of showcase their gifts on myself. It's because it's a great way to bridge things across. I
mean, there's lots of different ways, I suppose, that everyone contributes. Like you said, we are all it's all a collective, it's all a collective consciousness at the end of the day. And, with, I know with QHHT, for example, when we say, we speak to the subconscious and things like that, and the subconscious gives them or the client these experiences, and, we navigate them through that process. It's not the subconscious like psychiatrists or psychologists or whatever refer to. So
Not the Freudian
we
subconscious.
we call it that because, well, I suppose it's more commonly accepted, but also it's what Dolores called it as well, because she even herself admitted I didn't know what to call it at the time, what she tapped into. But you really are sort of tapping into that higher self, or that even more so than that, really. It's a collective consciousness that you tap into. And,
Okay.
I can say that with confidence, because the things that some clients will come out with and they could be on topics that, this client has never looked into before. It's something they're not into, but they will come out with information that I've heard from another client, or, they correlate. And, these people don't know each other. They haven't, spoken and said, oh, I'm going to go for a session. You say this, I'll say the same thing. Or, sometimes they'll say the same thing, but they explain it differently, but it's the same. Because when people tap into that state, and I know from my own experience, because of course, I've had many sessions myself as well.
Yourself regressed.
Sometimes, sometimes it can be very, very difficult to explain some things, because I'd say there are no human words sometimes to explain.
It's very hard.
What it is that you're trying to explain about a situation. So they do it the best they can.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be difficult sometimes.
We have.
Yeah. There are some things that are just beyond the words that we have. So, but it's so fascinating that clients will essentially correlate without obviously knowing it. They're correlating a lot of information.
It's not coordinated.
And I suppose that's probably and that's something Dolores and a lot of other, of course, QHHT practitioners will state as well. Especially when they've done a lot of sessions, you start to notice a lot of correlation between clients.
And of course, like I said, I'm not a practitioner or anything, but I've been regressed. I'm somebody who's I believe in it. I've studied the works of Miss Cannon. I've studied the works of Dr. Newton, Brian Weiss, all the people who pioneered this type of stuff. And recently, in the past couple years, and more recently this year, I've had a lot of I've been blessed to speak to a lot of people, like individuals like yourself, who are really actually on the front lines involved with doing this type of work. And I just have this major respect for it. But the biggest thing I will tell you that gives it 100% legitimacy in my mind, that took me, I don't even want to talk about hypnosis and regression first. I want to refer to the simple idea of reincarnation at all, or anything like reincarnation of the soul.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of things really, really, really woke me up. There's that phrase again. One was CE5 the meditations turning into trance states, and the CE5 protocols working. But the other, and I'm going to be straight up honest about this, and it's funny because I don't have any real big, crazy inside connection to hypnosis or QHHT or Dolores Cannon or anything like that. Mm-hmm. But it was the fact that I found out for sure, with true belief, that there was regressions happening. There were subconscious minds going under regression, under these similar and the same and different methods in all over the world, and coming out with the same information, the same stories, picking up with the same stories. You you've mentioned, what you mentioned as far as regressing people and having them kind of explain things the same way. And I'm sure you've probably seen films and studies and things like that, but I've seen even further, it's, at least tell of people working on a subject and then having, the conversation pick up in the same voice, exactly where it left off on a different continent 7 years later. Just the craziest stuff. And like to see that happen and to see proof of it and to see that it's possible and to see the change that it makes in people's lives is like, I mean, that was really hard for me to reckon. It wasn't hard for me to hear. It was just hard for me to deny that there was something to it. It was like, well, that doesn't just happen unless there's this secret group of people who are getting together and talking about what they're going to say under hypnosis and then moving to different continents and getting hypnotized.
Exactly.
Like, there's just no way. It's like insane.
It's not happening. That's not happening. Yeah, exactly. And, I think, and I'm someone who, sort of, I can be a bit slow with things, like in terms of, when I started doing regressions years ago, that I believed it, but there was always that niggling, I'll be honest, there was always that niggling part of me that thought, I don't know, as humans, we always have this little doubt with things we can do, right? And I still remember my real wake-up call was, thank goodness, very early on in my experience. And when I was doing a regression for a client, we got to the part where I asked to speak to their subconscious, their higher self, and I basically call it forward, give it permission to say, hey, can we chat with you? Like, what's going on? And it came through with this client quite strongly. And it said, I'm just trying to think, that the words were, I can't remember the exact words, but when I called it through, this client said, or the subconscious, through her said, she said something like, oh, it's you again.
Yeah, there you go.
And I was kind of a bit taken aback. I was like, well, okay. And I just, I was going along and I said, yes, it's me. And they're like, okay. And anyway, off we went. And I said to the client had never been regressed. First time I had seen her. And I asked her afterwards again, I said, have you ever been regressed before? She said no. And I was like, okay. And I said, do you remember saying this during the regret? Do you remember coming out with, oh, it's you again? And she said, yeah, she goes, I remember saying that. She goes, but I don't, she goes, it was really, really weird. And I went, yeah, that's really weird. Because
so
she said it was like
that
this
experience. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was like, wow, okay. So, and I've had similar ones since, but that one I remember specifically because it was the first time it had happened.
That's cool. So it's happened more than once.
I thought,
that type of situation.
Yeah, and I thought, right, okay, so we really are tapping into something that is a collective here because
collective, yeah.
Yeah, like I never figured she was a bit like, wow, yeah, this client was a bit, yeah, that's weird,
That's incredible, and that's got to be healing, and that's got to have its own healing capacity for yourself as the healer, as the practitioner. I mean,
definitely.
That's definitely it's at least partially fits the definition of a miracle. I mean, as far as the 3D world that we were all brought up in, it's pretty amazing, to have stuff like that start to happen.
It is, and and I find as well that and I know, I mean, Dolores passed in, was it 2014?
Yeah.
And so, sort of around the time of that gentle shift, shortly after. And
may have
I recall,
on this, may have been done right around that time. That might have been the case.
Yeah, that's it. And I think, there's recordings of Dolores out there where she talks about, even towards the end of her career, so leading up to her passing, where clients in sessions were becoming more and more aware during their sessions. When she started decades prior, clients would come out of hypnosis and they might remember little bits and pieces, but they pretty much had no memory of it. Whereas towards the end of her career, more and more people were aware during the sessions, which to me aligns with that whole slight shift in things. I think we are, as our consciousness increases, we're becoming more and more aware. And I feel that clients, they don't need to necessarily go to that point of almost being asleep, having no memory to actually access higher information, because
100%.
they're already there. Yeah.
They're already there. It's just a matter of tuning into that frequency. I've said it before, but I mean, it sometimes really is quite as simple as riding down the road in your car and tuning from 102.5 to 103.1. I mean, it's just on one station you're hearing drill rap that's just been painted as demonic, and maybe it really is. And I know as an artist, who's been in high levels of the music industry, that 808 frequencies are used. There was an organized switch to change the general frequency at which music was composed, or I'm sorry, embedded and released in. And that slight frequency shift, frequency is something that is oft spoken about, but I think not as understood as we might come to understand it in the coming years, coming weeks, months, whatever. It could really, really speed up. But to love cliches, I mean, with Nikola Tesla, if you want to understand the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and waves, or something to that effect.
Vibration.
Everything really is waves. Everything really is energy. Everything really is frequency. And that's where everything kind of started with this whole movement and Dolores obviously was a part of it. But I think where the masses, and I've had a few others kind of agree with me on this, was back in, I think it was The Secret. The film The Secret came out, and you had people talking about just the law of attraction, and that right there, the law of attraction, just simply you get out what you put in. You put stuff out there. You have positive intent, and you will receive. He who seeks shall find, he who knocks shall be answered, etc. That was something that the masses in 2006 could wrap their heads around, and they did. And that was the start of kind of that first wave of people who were really, really pushing the mass wake up and the mass movements for disclosure and things like that, where it really became start of not a fringe movement, but a movement that is here to stay and here to win.
And even with that movement, I find that really, really interesting too, because law of attraction or manifestation, whatever you want to call it, we're doing it all the time.
Whether we know it or not.
That's the thing. The universe doesn't just listen when you purposely sit there thinking and feeling something, with intention. Do you know what I mean? It's doing it all the time. So sitting there once or twice a day, or on a new moon, and trying to manifest something, but then staying low vibration the rest of the time, and then wondering why your manifestations aren't coming through. Well, you're in this state of manifesting the entire time. Whether you're manifesting what you want or whether you're manifesting what you don't want, you are manifesting.
And
so
something I always worry about, not so much worry, but think about and kind of caution people, not as a coach, but just as someone who, I don't know, is a person, that, those negative feelings, those negative thoughts, belief patterns, that kind of stinking thinking, the negative self-talk and everything like that, that's manifestation. That's speak and you shall, ask and you shall receive, knock and then the door shall be open. You spend 90% of the time, talking to yourself negatively and telling yourself that things aren't going to work out and that you're this and that's bad and you're not good enough and you're never going to this and I'm never going to that and things aren't right for me and this is never going to happen for me. I'm not worth it. whatever, so many negative things people say about themselves. I don't think people realize that that is manifestation at its finest. That's the law of attraction at its finest. Then to spend, the other 10% of the month, maybe whether that be, an hour at the end of each day or, the whole day on a moon. It's like the new moon each month,
Yeah.
manifesting and such positivity. That's that was so beautifully said. It's not that. It's about a full-time mindset and paradigm shift where you become very careful of your verbiage. You become very careful to say things in a certain way because some words have
Yes.
just negative connotations that you didn't realize had before. I mean, to get a little bit more fringe, the term spelling. I mean, there are a lot of things that people have been programmed to say over the years that are, spelling. I mean, the way we say things actually has an effect on the way that we live and the way that we think, the way we believe, and therefore the way that we, experience what we experience and how we react. Remembering. You can remember your past or you can remember yourself. You can remember yourself. I mean, just to make little examples like that. There's all sorts of little influxes and pieces in our verbiage that little tiny tweaks, and that's that tweak in frequency I'm speaking about can just change the game 100%. And
And I think that's something to be really aware of, that we are doing it all the time.
Absolutely.
All the time. The universe doesn't just listen when you want it to.
Yeah,
It's listening all the time. So yeah, I think coming to that realization and and then starting to shift your what you're thinking, what you're feeling, what you're saying, everything, and what you think about other people. If you've got a friend who always, let's say, lets you down, never turns up to things, and if you always think that about the person or even if you talk to other people about it, oh, she never turns up to things or whatever, well, you're going to continue creating that as well, for other people.
They always let me down.
How we talk about ourselves, or
they never pay me back. Every time I see them, like, well, if you're only maybe at work,
they're contributing to
it at best.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I'm like, oh, okay, yeah.
So being that
it's interesting.
It is interesting. We humans are interesting. So something I thought, and just, I watch a lot of like docs. I really try to stay up to date on, what people are doing and what people are understanding about the soul and where people are at in the state of. And honestly, one of the best places to understand and study the soul is from regressionists. I mean, that's dancing with the soul at its finest. What a question I have, and and something that Dolores started to say at the end of her life, since we started talking about her, the karma with a capital K, the past life karma. Let's say for clear-cut examples here, let's say I was an evil warrior in a past life, and I took a person's arm away from me to pay off that karmic debt. Might be to choose a life with no arm. Dolores, and in my understanding, Dolores Cannon was stating that that past life karmic debt, that karma with a capital K, was not something that we were enslaved to anymore, as a super organism, as an earth that's going to ascend with the souls on it, which are going to ascend with her. Of course, karma now, if I put my hand on a burning stove, I would burn my hand. I would say karma with the lowercase k. But what do you think on that, as far as somebody who's studied under that method? Is that something you've heard about? Something? What do you think about it?
Yeah, my beliefs are that karma, it's not a punishment and reward system. It's not, all right, I kill someone in this lifetime, so therefore my next lifetime I will be killed by that person. Or, like some people think it's like an eye for an eye type thing. But my belief is that only keeps you on the wheel of karma, because where does that stop? Do you know what I mean? It's, all right, I've killed you, now you kill me, but then you've got to kill you. Like, where does that stop, right? So karma is, and this is something actually comes up in a lot of regressions too, it's always repaid in love, always. So, for example, Tyler, if I had killed you in a past life, and at the end, we're all, we've finished our lives and our souls are reviewing how we sort of went. We go, oh, it didn't go too well, did it? We went a bit far there, and I took your life, and all right, well, how can we repay, and then you sort of come to these agreements, okay, and then you might make an agreement, let's say, to, in the next life, okay, well, now because I took your life last time, I have to repay that, so I'm going to repay it with love. So let's say you come back as this be a bit out there, but it's a bit of an example.
Yeah.
Let's say you're my child in the next lifetime, and let's say you're born with some disability or something that's going to require me to essentially look after you your entire life.
A lot longer than something above the task of a normal parent. A typical
child. Or something like that. Like it's always repeating something where, okay, so I took your life, so now I have to look after you your entire life, or something, along those kind of lines.
So it's no longer a situation of like paying off karmic debt by just I took an arm, so
it's not I'm
going to experience life without an arm. Like we seem to have maybe ascended beyond that concept. I like the way you say it's more based in love rather than personal suffering and retribution. Is that correct?
Yeah, and because I think that the suffering, the retribution, the eye for an eye revenge type, let's call it, scenario of, it's you stay on that wheel of karma, and the idea is to get off.
Yeah, I mean,
you don't want to keep
the eye for the eye makes the world blind. It's makes sense. Absolutely.
And they say, and I'm a believer of this as well, they say that this planet Earth is the only place with all the various types of emotions and feelings and things that we have here, we don't have anywhere else.
Why we come.
And why we come, right? It's part of the reason why we come. But it's kind of like, we've decided to run a race and we've just put grease or oil all over the track. We've just made it a little bit trickier by throwing all these emotions and things into the mix. I mean, anywhere else, and I know even in regressions, people go to the other side after they pass from their life that they view, and they go to the other side, and it's all just pure love. So how can we get off the wheel of karma if that's, the other way to get off it is through love?
Yeah, and it's, for me lately, it's been about transmutation. I mean, that's kind of the word that I've kind of pinned on it, but taking negative experiences, taking negative events, feeling the feelings associated with them, understanding that it's, it's sometimes okay to feel those feelings. I mean, they're not always going to be amazing feelings. Of course. You have to. I mean, an example, something I'm personally going through that I've mentioned before. My mother passed away about 7 weeks ago or so. It's very recent. She was sick, but she took a turn for the worst last minute, and it was a very quick turn for the worst. She passed. She's gone. She was only 54, and my father passed when I was young too. So I'm in the world with. Here to carry on the bloodline now. But something that's giving me a little bit of peace through that is just knowing that things have shifted towards, like you said, love, that things have shifted towards a concept of love and a frequency of love rather than retribution and things like that. My big dark night of the soul, where I kind of had, for lack of a better term, I guess, a bit of a depression and such was during the time where, well, my mother was diagnosed with illness. It was during the kind of the lockdowns and everything like that. So it was kind of hard to get like as much quality treatment as we had hoped to receive in a timely manner, because of course at the time it was isolate, stay home, isolate, etc.
Yeah.
That combined with seeing, just spending time and seeing inside of that, that world, and seeing the, not only what it cost, and seeing the people that didn't have access while we did, because it was, a matter of status and cost. That bothered me. It gave me a form of like by survivor guilt by proxy. There were times where, and then of course that little catalyst there, just in that whole situation, that kind of forced me to look inward and start taking my meditation and my relationship with my higher self and everything a little bit more serious, not as a joke, but genuinely more serious. And it actually resulted in, I don't recall if this was before we started recording or not, but it actually resulted in me the meditations into full-blown trance meditations, not channeling trances, but trance meditations. And then another huge catalyst, and sometimes it's a person, sometimes it's a whatever, but I got to credit Dr. Stephen Greer. I mean, the CE5 protocols, it's something that I dove into. I saw films on, I saw enough material on that I was like, all right, if I didn't, I used to think I could meditate and relax for 20 minutes. Now they're 4-hour crazy, like floating around the astral world dream states. Maybe there's something to this, this CE5 stuff. And there was, and that I think was the final, like, boom, like I can't participate in what I was programmed to do and what I was taught to remember and repeat for the rest of my life. And I'm thankful for those things, those dark things, because it enabled me to go through, when I went through a dark time, it wasn't as dark as what the real dark times were like. When I really saw my mom get really sick and lost her and had to deal with her affairs and things like that, which I'm still doing. By that time, I was actually living in a much higher frequency, in a space where I don't, not to say that I was unaffected or anything like that, but I was in a place to do things like give a very impactful eulogy, to smile for somebody who needed it more than I did at the time, to keep a positive attitude and a positive front for the people. I have younger siblings and things like that. I mean, to kind of to be the leader in times of need, and still.
And I think that's a very important thing that you've brought up as well. It's not about not feeling those, say, negative or low vibrational feelings like grief and sadness and maybe depression and things like that. That's normal. We're human. We're meant to feel these things. It's what we're here for. But the trick is to not hold on to them.
Yeah.
It's to feel it and let it move through. Don't get stuck there. That's the danger.
Don't avoid the feelings,
process
but don't get stuck
move
there
on.
either, right? I mean, you don't want to avoid it entirely. That was also something I used to do, was everything I possibly could to avoid a feeling, and that used to get me in trouble too. I mean,
well, I mean, and it's like what you said before, what was that, like spelling, for example. I mean, what's emotion? It's motion. Energy in motion. It has to be in motion, it has to flow.
And everything is always
You've got to let it through.
Everything is always in motion, in a potential wave of possibilities until it's observed. I mean, and love it or hate it, that's the truth. It's not just a theory anymore. It's a proven experiment. See the double slit. It's just the way it is.
Yes.
I mean, the observer affects.
Is that the one? Is that the am I thinking of the right experiment?
For the observer,
It is only when you
the
observe.
observer affects
Yeah,
the actions of that, of that which is being observed. So, when the particles were sent, the double slit experiment was when there was particles isolated and sent through a system, a box like this, where there's two slits in them, hence the double slit. And they would send a wave, a shot of, think of like a ping pong gun or a Nerf gun or something, shooting singular particles the center of both of these slits. And when there was, a conscious observer of the particles in place, something actually at that level, at that speed, at that microscopic level, at that quantum level, able to observe the speed of a particle, a subatomic particle, an observer made those particles shoot very organized through the slits. And, so if you shot 1 and 1 through slit left and right, they hit the wall behind it like this, left and right. You could shoot 100 through the left and 200 to the right, and you'd have 100 hits on the left and 200 hits on the right. But when you remove the observer, remove the observer at the quantum level, something able to observe those particles, what you find in the consequences of trying to explain this clearly, the backdrop there is that if you shoot, and I say shoot, but if you blast a particle wave here through a system that's basically a double slit, what you end up finding on the backdrop behind the double split is the entire chalkboard is covered, because without the observer, that particle does not stay in a still singular form. It exists in the form of a wave, an endless wave of potential possibilities. So shot from here, looking at my camera, that particle could go anywhere, and it does do very much that, and show that that's the case until you introduce the observer, and then things become observationally orderly, which says a lot about our world, because we are the observer. And are we the only observer? Are there other methods of observation? Are there different levels of observation? It just, there's so many implications.
You could really spiral from there into lots of different avenues.
It's a big one.
But and for me, it also shows that we are all connected. So not just to each other, we have that influence over each other, and we are all connected to other humans. We are connected to literally everything. Every bit of matter, every particle, that rock in your garden, like, we are all connected.
Absolutely.
So, how otherwise could you influence these particles just by observation?
Absolutely.
If there is no connection on a quantum level, there has to be.
So, as a practitioner of, regression, what's something that's come up, as since we're kind of talking about these common themes and things like that, if there been anything lately in your regressions that, and you don't have to get too specific, of course, I know what you do is very secret and very, it's private, but may I ask if has there been anything coming up specifically in trend lately that you've noticed, even personally, whether it be surface level or just on a theme base? Is there anything you're noticing from clients that are kind of coming from the same place, from a soul level, but maybe not coming from the same places, like we said earlier, as far as knowing each other? Could you maybe give me a little bit of what you've kind of experienced on that, like recently in the past year or so, etc.?
Actually, I would say recently. And again, I'm really bad with time frames. I want to say the last, and I'm like, well, look, it's probably the last at least 6 months.
Okay.
A really common theme that's coming, and I would say it's a theme because, of course, it comes through differently for everyone, is this theme around self-love and self-acceptance a lot of that is coming through. And even, I'm just trying to think back, even with that grief as well. What I mean by that is a lot of people are, whether they know it or not, and this happens to come up in the regression, is so there'll be grief that they've had in their life, and it could be from any situation, it could be from a passing or losing a job or a friendship breakup, it could be anything at all.
A lifestyle.
And that
whatever.
grief,
yeah,
and that grief is affecting their life now and they don't realize it, but it comes up during the regression. And there's this theme, I would say, the last few months about letting go of that grief, and also with that as well, the whole self-love, the self-acceptance, and being authentic as part of that has been a theme that I've noticed has come up a lot with clients. So not so much like any, like that, I'm sure there have been bits of information that have come through that have correlated, but just in terms of overall overarching, I suppose, themes, that's been quite strong. And it's funny because I do notice that things come in, like what I call come in waves. I'll get, let's say I'll have a row of clients who, one after the other, say, might all have galactic experiences during their regression. And then I'll have a spate of clients who are all, I don't know what Dolores Cannon used to call, they all have digging potatoes lives, which is what a lot of people might consider sort of a like a better term, like a boring past life. They were a farmer, or they were,
they could have been
nothing too exciting
like
going on in
low
their past life.
thing,
But
like
I mean,
a cat or a rock or something, right?
Yeah. So, it's, and even in those though, what I love about those lives is that there is the reason the subconscious or high self brings it forward is because there is relevant information in that life for that person. So there's always information there that person needs. It's just what experience the subconscious wants to give them to get that message through. But yeah, I just find that I have waves come through. It's really interesting how that happens. And also, and I know a lot of other practitioners pick up on this as well. And again, it's one of those things where I think I don't have no comprehension on how this happens, and I don't think I really need to know how it happens. Is that sometimes I will have, a lot of the time this happens actually, clients will be telling me about their life story or whatever the message was for them. Somehow it was what I needed to hear at that time too. It's as if these clients come
healing for you also.
Obviously it's for them, don't get me wrong, but it seems to be that as practitioners we attract the clients we need just as much as clients are attracted to go to certain practitioners, because I don't know, there's that connection. I suppose
that's that new world,
a lot of clients,
energy exchange, the currency of energy, the energetic exchange that we need. Of course, we still, but in this 3D earth that we live in now, the modern society, we all need Australian dollars and American dollars or Bitcoin or whatever it is that you use to to live and eat and take care of your family and basically have hygiene and things like that. Let's not deny that. That's true. But I think it sounds like what you're describing is that you're finding fulfillment in the currency of energy, which is something that I think a lot of people are starting to be exposed to as a real practical idea, not just a theory, not just a abstract principle. And it gives me hope that there will be. I'm 32 years old. I hope to be around for a little while. I love to see a world where, at least, if not myself, my kids, my grandkids, I don't have any kids yet, so I'm gonna just get cracking on that if that's the case. But where there's not so much an emphasis on binary system, fiat capitalism. I mean, I'm not here to bash the systems in place, but I mean, I could. I'm not against, currency. I'm not against money. I'm not against freedom. But I think that the people who end up with those resources, those avenues of freedom, those levels of freedom might not always be ones who sought the right path and got the freedom that they deserved and therefore used it as they should. I mean, we see wealth
Mm.
hoarding and things like that as problems on this earth. We obviously see a certain group of elites, to what size and what degree of influence they are operating at. None of us truly have a finger on that, but we know that, of course, that there are still malevolent forces out there in the world that we live in, that are actively working against what you and I are actively working for, which is the ascension, the move towards the new earth, the move towards the further understanding back into self, where the other side is more worship outward, not inward. Whatever you do, don't seek inward. And that whole
Yeah,
stuff.
and they have a place
But they
too.
do have a
I
place, because I was once a very much a part of that identity, and I wasn't ashamed to admit it. And that is why I'm able to appreciate the other side. That's why I'm able to appreciate and even feel enough personal gratitude and confidence in myself to get up every morning and do anything. Because I experienced one way of living and experienced a change and experienced that somebody said something to me wise the other day, that like, you can always be the first one to be the new person. You can decide to not engage, to not participate any longer. And I think in I'm not speaking in anything really specific here, but I think we modern humans in Western life, we tend to operate in a sense of I guess ultimately comes to fear and a little bit of guilt. If we let's say have engaged in aggressive behavior, even in response to being provoked, being maybe attacked, maybe just poked, whatever. If we have engaged back, if we've responded, then I've heard people feel guilty, and they're not able to, therefore, since they responded to something that happened to them, then they're just as bad, and they're not able to be better. They're not able to move on. They're not able to make different choices going forward. And what I want to say to anybody is, and as a non-professional, as just a man who's going through life's weird twists and turns and trying to navigate them the best that I can, it doesn't matter what you've engaged in the past, because maybe you were poked, provoked, what you did in defense of, whether it was your inner child or defense of your physical safety now, you can always change the way you react. And that can be the way you react from that moment forward. It never has to be that way again. Using the excuse, and I did this for a long time, I used the excuse that, well, I'm just as guilty. They might have done this, but I'm no better. I did this back. I said this back. I would, just whatever, speaking broadly. What came as a big change for me was when I realized that, while it's not like you're let off the hook for those things. You should make amends when you can. You should, best you can to make things right in the world. But if you're in a situation where you feel stuck from, I guess, ascending to the next level, stuck from growing spiritually because of some of the things you've done in your past or some of the things you've engaged in even recently, now is the second you can stop engaging. Now is the second that you don't have to be that person anymore. And before you know it, you're not that person anymore. Your mindset's changed. You don't make those kinds of decisions anymore. And I promise you, once that really happens, you're not going to attract those types of people, situations, places, things, experiences anymore. It's just not going to happen. It's going to go away.
Exactly. Exactly. And it all comes down to, well, what you described is a perfect example of manifestation, really. Because, if you're not vibrating at that anymore, you're not going to attract that anymore. And you're right, everyone, it doesn't matter what you've done in the past, would be 30 seconds ago versus 10 years ago. Time has nothing to do with it. Everyone has the power to, well, I'll say change. Change doesn't, it's not even really the right word. Everyone has the power to become who they really are without having all of these, behaviors or things that they're doing. But ultimately, a lot of the behaviors, or let's say what people perceive as negative things, they're always usually triggered by something from the external or 3D world.
100%.
No one does something because it was triggered by something that came to them from the 5D world during a meditation. Like it's not. It's always triggered from something within the current world that we're in. But the current world that we're in is not our ongoing reality. It's not who we are on a soul level. So yeah, when I say people have the ability to change, it's more like they have the ability to become who they really are, as opposed to change. Because I believe that everyone. Yeah, that's it. I mean, it's not a case of changing or becoming someone else. It's really just almost stripping those layers off. It's removing the layers that we have built on over the years as we've grown up, or we put these layers on that are creating this personality or this persona. But then it's starting to learn which ones serve us and which ones don't, and peeling those ones off. Again, so it's more about, rather than finding who you are, it's about losing who you're not.
I've heard it referred to as back to that spelling thing, the remembering, not just remembering your past, but while you remember your past, you remember yourself. You reconfigure what you thought about yourself in the past. It's just little powerful tweaks of the verbiage and the mindset are so powerful. It's incredible. The work that you do, the way that you dive into it, the way that you help people and guide people through that stuff is just, it's so powerful. It's so powerful. Like, I actually feel like I'm doing something good just by sitting here and letting you talk about what you do. I mean, it's quite an amazing world. You don't have to whoever you are, there's a place for you to serve. There's a place for you to help the new earth. There's a place for you to grow. And there's ways you'll learn lessons along the way. There just are. There's no shortage of lessons. Like, would you agree, Nadia? I don't think whatever path you take, there's no shortage of ways to learn lessons.
Definitely not. And you know what? That's part of the journey. That's what makes our time here as well so beautiful. And it's accepting that, there will be lessons along the way. Learn them, integrate them, move on. Next. When's the next one? Like, look forward to it with positivity. Even things, and I always say things we perceive as negative, because, often, and you brought this up earlier on, things at the time may seem like a negative experience or something, but there's always something positive. There's always and the positivity comes out of, a lot of the time, the lesson that's
absolutely
that's in there for us. And we learn it, integrate it, move on to the next level.
Not
like
always
a video
meant
game.
for us
move
to
to
be
the next
seen
level.
right at that very moment. That's just not the way that those things work. It's meant for us to trust and feel the higher purpose and trust in, whether you call it source or spirit, or just being aligned with the right frequency and trusting that you're doing so it's okay. I mean, that's what it's all about. Is there's got to be a little bit of faith. I mean, involved in the way that you're living, faith in the unknown, faith in the unknown, in its ability to produce drastically positive outcomes. I mean, of course, be safe, be cautious, be wary, but don't be too safe. Don't be too cautious. Don't be too wary. Don't be afraid of things that are just simply unknown to you. Because some of the things that you are afraid of simply because you don't know what they are and they're not familiar might be the very next thing that changes your life right this moment. I mean, that's the spice of this whole all of this.
And also on that, I guess with yourself, Tyler, and probably anyone listening as well, the moments. Yes, there are some really significant moments that change our lives, but when we look back on our lives, sometimes it can be the smallest moment or the smallest interaction, and that can either plant a seed or be a trigger of some kind for something else, but we don't realize it at the time.
100%.
So every single interaction, every single moment has that potential. So yeah, it doesn't have to be a big
epiphany or
something that
something
would be
like
an
that.
obvious.
So it doesn't have to be a bird flying into your
no.
head while you're walking down the sidewalk. Pay attention to the signs, because you don't know. You just intuition is a real thing. Gut feelings, they're very real things. What has popularly been referred to as the download, etc. That stuff is real. Recurring dreams, things like that. I mean, it can't hurt to just pay a little mind to the signs, right?
And you'll find also that the more open-minded you are, or the more accepting you are of those experiences, whether it be like synchronicities, always seeing the same numbers or the same bird or whatever, or like you said, recurring dreams, getting downloads, whatever it may be, the more accepting you are of them rather than disregarding them, the more you'll actually receive.
Absolutely.
So I don't know if you've experienced that as well. The minute you say, "Oh, thanks," there's that, and you accept them for what they are.
The more you receive,
you actually get more. And I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah, with the law of simple attraction, the more you receive, and not only that, but the more they seem to. I mean, the more of them that there are, the more connection that seems to be made, the more clarity that I seem to reach. The longer a particular synchronicity goes on, the clearer the metaphorical finger point down a certain path becomes. It's within all of us. It's within all of us. We all have divine guidance within all of us. It's not simple. I don't mean to make it that simple as far as tapping into those things, but it can be very simple. It's as simple as letting go, but letting go is not easy, and it's a process of reprogramming and exploring self, and working with people like Nadia, who are out there on the front lines, doing regressions to help better understand the collective and help bring people through their past life traumas and things like that, and really understand where things are coming from. It's all encompassing.
And you say it's not that simple, but the thing is, it should be. That it should be, like, it really should be simple. The connection that we all have, because that's probably our most natural
once you
state.
realize that it's there. It's very, very simple. It's very natural, and it's very innate.
And
it's very.
It should be simple. Unfortunately, we have a lot of interference.
We complicate things.
Here on this planet, and it starts from the moment we're born. Everything that we're exposed to, what we're grown up, how we're taught, what we're led to believe, the messaging we receive. It's you're essentially absorbing all this information and programming your entire life. And when you get to that point, you realize, hang on, it's not really who I am.
Yeah, I mean, I said it, a filling of the cup that it was a filling of. I mean, I needed. Let's say I needed apple juice, but I got 12 years worth of a cup of milk. I mean, it's great information and stuff, but it's nothing that was really all that helpful to memorize the timetables and all that stuff. I mean, I wish I was taught how to seek inward and seek self, and develop natural abilities and things like that, and taught to pursue my passions. Now, I mean, of course, everybody has a little bit of that to their own degree, but as far as mainstream schooling and everything went to, that's not the case. That's something you have to go down a path on your own, at least right now in the West. But that's something that I hope to see changing soon, in at least my lifetime. I see a lot more of us.
Yeah, and I think we'll head that way. It will happen. It's still a long way away. There are information now is much more accessible. So having exposure, or people being able to be exposed to non-mainstream education, things that isn't taught in Western schools, it's a lot more readily available, which, obviously is very important. Not to say that everyone should go down certain paths, but it's there if people want it, and it's easier to find. That's right. At least it's there. It's more accessible, which I think is really important.
Super important. And to tag on to that, I think it's, while it's still very much a, the current world 3D kind of concept, these ideas are being embraced by people that, didn't traditionally embrace these ideas, industries that didn't traditionally embrace these ideas. They're permeating, areas of mainstream zeitgeist and primetime television and things like that, mainstream sports, where they didn't used to. It was not something that used to be able to be talked about. It was not something that anybody could identify with. And, now it's something, at least a little move of the ticker is something that, you do see a lot of people who have had, either have now or have had in the past, a lot of influence, talking about their experience with alternate healing and their spiritual journeys and their experience with extraterrestrials and in all sorts of different things all across the gamut. And that, is sometimes a part of what it takes for a lot of people to, people look up to certain people. That's sometimes where people look for guidance. And that wasn't something that I saw quite as much of in years past. So that's, another beautiful thing. I mean, it's just great.
And people coming forward like that is good too, because it gives people out there, this way, there are a lot of clients that I receive, or that I, have in my practice, that I suppose you would say they're not your stereotypical people, right? That you would imagine coming forward for a QHHT session. Right. And even myself, many years ago, before getting into this, if you think of people that way minded or whatever, you picture someone, tie-dye clothing, covered in crystals, like driving a van, just whatever, like, you're not, like but, and I think that was something that I sort of struggled with as well myself in the very early days, was I thought, well, I'm not that person. Yes, I've got a few crystals and I like that kind of stuff, but I'm not driving a van. I'm not on the bongo drums. I'm not out camping. I'm not in tie-dye. Like, I don't, I suppose, visually present as that stereotypical person, right? And so I sort of struggled with that a little bit.
That's something that we all do.
Because, I thought, well, is this
it's
right?
The ego,
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. You think, oh, hang on, am I this person? Am I really having these experiences, or am I really, thinking a certain way? Is my way of thinking correct? Because I don't outwardly present as that.
Ethos, or is this something I really came up with on my own, and then you don't even know and
what's going on? Yeah. And the people that I have coming in for sessions, I mean, I've had things like, obviously, like business people. I've actually had some. It's kind of funny. They come in, like I said, they come in waves. I've had some high-profile sports people from different sports as well. So these people don't know each other, and some from overseas as well that have happened to be in Australia, and they just come and see. And so, things that you wouldn't people, I suppose, that you wouldn't ordinarily expect. And I think I tend to attract those types of people too, because I'm that way myself. You know, they come into my place where I do my sessions, and
It's not
it doesn't look
too
like a regular treatment
woo-woo.
room. Like, it's literally a lounge area. I have a bar on the side with fully stocked alcohol. It is not like
Yeah,
a
that's
typical
cool.
it's like sitting in a lounge room chatting with someone before they lay
That's
on the couch
awesome.
and have a regression. You know, there's no chakra chart on the
Yeah,
wall. There's no, but
nothing
you know,
uncomfortable, nothing
and
unfamiliar.
I struggled with that for a long time. But I thought, well, no, that's who I am. I'm going to be
Who
authentic,
you
and
are is we
so
need
yeah, I
you.
tend
We
to
need
attract
who
people.
you are. There's no other you.
Yeah,
There's nobody else out there going to play you.
no, and so it's funny. Well, that's it, and I think it's important that people understand that they, you know, they can be themselves. You know, they can. You don't have to fit a mold. You know, tick all the boxes to a certain thing to be of.
100%.
Yeah, there's make your own mold,
Amen.
essentially. Be who you want, because, like you said, there is no other you. So who can tell you
And
who you can
that's the
be?
most beautiful
Like,
thing too, when someone is just truly their authentic self. I mean, that's somebody that I'm drawn to, just, and I don't mean like romantically or anything necessarily, but just in general. I mean, somebody who is genuine and authentic and truthful. You know, by nature, there are other things. They're a little more trustworthy. They're a little more magnetic. You want to spend time around them. They make you feel good because, well, why wouldn't someone who's genuine and authentic and, you know, real? I mean, and if we were all really, really, really that way, and I know it's, yeah, there's no fault from not, for sometimes being, you know, wearing the different masks that we wear, because we live in a world where it's not so easy to
no,
be your 100% true self all the time. But as we get used to being our true self more and more and more, and understanding that it's okay and it's accepted, and we find not just find our tribe, but that we find that the tribe's a lot bigger than we thought it was. I think people will be surprised. I think a lot of people will actually be less surprised than we thought. I think a lot of people will be able to handle things just fine. And
that's a good point. The tribe is a lot bigger. I think, you know, that's a good way to put what I was thinking before. The tribe is a lot bigger than what we realize, because not everyone looks like that stereotypical thing. So walking down the street, you know, or while you're watching sports on TV, you know, you're watching the like the football or the tennis or soccer, whatever it is, and you're looking at those players, you wouldn't think, oh, you know, they've had experiences or they've done, like, it just doesn't even cross your mind as you're doing that. But trust me, these people
I
do.
get the messages.
Like, I've seen, you know, that, yeah, you're the guy who runs the bank down the road, or the, you know, like the guy who does your taxes. Like, you know, these people that you wouldn't
All
normally
walks of life.
think. They certainly have.
All walks of life.
Yeah, like the tribe is a lot
really
bigger.
is.
But because we're not, obviously, you know, a lot of people are still afraid, I think, to speak up and talk about certain things.
Especially in certain people who
then,
are
of course, the other person
in
doesn't
certain
talk.
industries where it's frowned upon and other people aren't talking, you know. I can speak a little more openly about these things because, you know, I'm not in an industry that frowns upon anything, really. I mean, I'm just talking about things. But if I worked for, you know, a certain corporation or a certain a union or something, then I'd have to be really careful about, you know, I guess what would be my livelihood if, you know, that were the case. But for whatever reason, I'm not personally in that position. It seems like you rely on, you know, your QHHT and in what you do. So you have a little bit more freedom to speak on, well, of course, and promote what you do.
Yeah.
But if, you know, you were a traditional, you know, Western trained psychologist of talk therapy, then maybe you wouldn't want to go on podcasts and praise Dolores Cannon. I don't know. But there's
yeah. Oh look, I know some doctors, you know, medical doctors who are very much into what I do and believe that should be part of mainstream
but they're
medicine.
off the record on it.
They have that, they talk about that with me, but they're of course not going to go out there and talk about that because, that could be their livelihood.
Yeah,
That's
I
their
mean, they can't.
license gone.
Of course, agreed.
Yeah. So the tribe is a lot bigger. Yeah, it's interesting how that sort of all comes into play. But I think even just knowing though that
not even close to
there are many more people out there.
That's why Nadia is a perfect guest for this new but growing show, is because she is out there doing exactly what she can do, her whatever she was guided to do, which is, she was trained and now she has a great practice and she's built up experience and she's really making and changing people's lives for the better, which is changing her life for the better, if you haven't caught that through this conversation. And that's really what it's all about. And that's a win for everybody. And I don't know if you caught on to it, but it's a win for you, anybody who's looking into this camera and looking into my eyes. I mean, if you could find a way to feel like you're doing no harm, only doing good, not really ever working because you're only helping people become the way you want things to become, and you also know you're not pressuring anyone, and that's your livelihood and that's your lifestyle, why would you, that's not a bad way to be. And I have people come on this show who are living that embodiment, and Nadia is, I mean, absolutely, to be doing, regression hypnotherapy full time, to have such a following on the internet, to be coming on podcasts and spreading her star. I mean, hopefully we'll see a lot more material from her one day. I know we will. She's just doing it. And, Nadia, I hope we can check back in with you and have you on again so we can touch base with Australia a little more often. Do you have any events or anything like that you've got coming up? In the US, there's a lot of actual in-person events and things that are starting to come up. But do you have anything like that coming up soon?
I do run some in-person and online virtual events. The virtual ones, obviously the in-person ones are all around Melbourne. I don't tend to travel a lot for work anyway, for doing this stuff. But I mean, that might change down the track. But I do run some virtual events. Now, the one I do actually have one coming up in August, which is a online past life regression meditation event. And they're always a lot of fun because the past life regression that I do online, it was actually a group regression method that was developed by Dolores Cannon as well. So it's using her group method, and they're a lot of fun. Obviously it's not, a one-on-one regression. It's not as deep as, say, QHHT.
Right. Sounds like a worthwhile experience.
But they're a lot of fun, and people do still have their own experience and get information come through. And what I find fascinating is sometimes the information that comes through, because of course, in the chat, or people will unmute themselves and talk about their experience. People sometimes have similarities with their experiences, which is really interesting. Where there's people logged on from all around the world, and somehow, I think the last one I ran a couple of weeks ago, there was about 5 or 6 people that said, my gosh, mine involved a wedding. Like, it was just really weird. There's these odd similarities. But so I've got that coming up in August. Yeah.
Well, any of course, just like anybody who comes on the Immersive Podcast, any of Nadia's links will be in the bio of this video. If you follow the show, myself, my producer, Jane, shout out to Jane, on Instagram, or Nadia, we really try the best we can to promote our guests' events and services and things like that, anywhere possible. And, Nadia, I know you're out there in down under Australia, but if there's anything that you're interested in, and anything that you see that's going on in the States this summer, I know there's a lot of events going on, but if there's anything that you think you might want to be a part of and you're curious who's running it, I mean, feel free to keep in touch with us here at the Immersive Podcast. We have some connections and stuff. So if you want to branch out and maybe see what you could do about getting involved with an event across the pond, We will certainly be keeping in touch, I hope. And I'm not quitting
Exciting.
this show anytime soon. So recurring guests can always be a thing. And the truth be told, I love having a chat with somebody who's so far away. It's so much fun to just to spread the new earth love, the new earth vibration across the world like that. So thank you so much for taking the time to kind of be with us today, to tell us about what you do. And of course, again, I'll say one more time, anything that you do will be heavily accessible in the bios, and we'll pull some good clips for today so we can we want to get Natalie out there and show the world that Natalie is taking action just as we are, but she's actually doing like real things, not just making a podcast. She's really healing people. So check her out, check out her profile, check out her links, check out her website. Please do so. And Nadia, is there anything that you'd like to say, kind of before we sign off? Anything that you want to touch on? Anything like that?
No, just thank you so much for having me on. I really enjoy speaking about not only what I do, but hearing it from yourself as well, and your own perspective on things. Because we all have our own perspective, our own experiences. And I love hearing it. Just as you like having your guests, I love hearing it from whoever's hosting. And so thank you for having me on. It's been a real pleasure.
The pleasure's all mine. This will come out sometime later in the month. This is obviously pre-recorded, as everybody's probably assumed. But Nadia, if you'd like a copy of any of this, you can certainly get one and promote it to your following. We're all about cross-promotion here. One last shout out to Unified TV. We love the support that you've given us, and GFL Clothing. Hopefully next episode, I won't be wearing a Celtics or a Lakers jersey. I'll be wearing some Lightworker gear. So this is Tyler with the Immersive Podcast, signing off. I can't believe we are this deep into that many episodes. Thank you all for being here. Light, love, and magic.